I'm Audrey, 28 years old, and I can still picture that day as if it were yesterday. The day my body completely lost all feeling from the waist down. The day my brother Jason stood above me, mocking his vicious prank as I lay paralyzed on the concrete. The day my father barked, "Just walk it off, stop being a baby." And my mother blamed me for spoiling Jason's birthday celebration. Little did they know that their callous disregard for my pain would soon turn them into criminals. If you've ever had your distress brushed aside by the very people who should have cared most, tell me where you're watching from in the comments, then hit that like and subscribe button. And stick around for a story about how my family's betrayal altered my life forever. Life in the Matthews household always felt like tiptoeing on eggshells. From the outside, our family seemed picture perfect, a charming suburban house in Massachusetts, a thriving accountant for a father, a mother who embodied the perfect homemaker, and 2 children who excelled academically, but looks can definitely be misleading. My father, Douglas Matthews, stood at 6'2", a pillar of emotionless rigidity. He genuinely believed that expressing feelings was a sign of frailty. He'd been raised by a military father who instilled in him the idea that pain is just weakness leaving the body. Sadly, he passed these harmful convictions directly to his children, particularly to his eldest son. "Jason, Audrey, you need to toughen up," was my father's constant refrain during my upbringing. Whether I had a scraped knee, a broken heart, or a genuine illness, his reaction was always identical: downplay it, dismiss it, and move on. My mother, Eleanor, wasn't much different. While she sometimes offered hints of warmth, her deepest loyalty always lay with my father and Jason. She was a perpetually anxious woman, seemingly terrified of disturbing the fragile equilibrium of our home. If recognizing my discomfort threatened that balance, she would opt for denial without fail. "Your brother would never whine about something like that," she'd remark, making unfavorable comparisons that sliced far deeper than any physical injury. And then there was Jason, my brother, 3 years my senior, now 31. He'd spent his whole life as the favored child, the son who, in our parents' view, could do no wrong. Athletic, charming, and cunning, Jason quickly grasped that he could get away with anything as long as he maintained his flawless facade around mom and dad. I vividly recall being 7. With Jason at 10, he shoved me off my bike, resulting in a broken wrist. When I tearfully told our parents, Jason insisted I'd fallen on my own due to clumsiness, they believed him instantly. At the hospital, my father lectured me on being more careful, while my mother fretted over the medical expenses. Not once did they even consider that Jason might be fabricating the story. This dynamic persisted throughout our childhood and well into our adult lives. Jason would harass me with pranks that veered into outright cruelty, and our parents would either disregard his actions or blame me for instigating them. When I was 12, Jason trapped me in our basement for hours during a thunderstorm, fully aware of my fear of the dark. When I finally escaped and confronted our parents, they accused me of inventing tales for attention. At 16, Jason sabotaged my science project the night before it was due, causing me to fail. When I explained to my parents, they simply suggested I should have been more organized and not procrastinated. By the time I became an adult, I'd learned to maintain a safe distance from my family. I left home at 18 for college in a different state, only returning for major holidays and family gatherings. I established a life as an elementary school teacher, found friends who genuinely cared about my welfare, and began therapy to heal the wounds from my childhood. Yet, family bonds are notoriously difficult to completely break. Regardless of how diligently I tried to set boundaries, a sense of guilt and duty consistently drew me back into their sphere. That's why, when my mother called to insist I attend Jason's 31st birthday party, I grudgingly agreed. It had been 6 months since I'd seen any of them, and a part of me secretly hoped that distance and time might have softened our dynamic. "It would mean so much to your brother if you came," my mother chirped. Though I seriously doubted Jason even noticed my absence. "We're having a backyard barbecue, and your father's finishing the new pool deck. Everyone will be there." By everyone, she meant Jason's friends, most of whom were just as insufferable and arrogant as he was. The idea of an afternoon with them made my stomach clench. Still, I was out of viable excuses. "Fine, I'll be there," I conceded, instantly regretting it. "Wonderful. And please dress appropriately. You know how crucial appearances are to your father." That last remark landed exactly as intended. My mother knew I'd recently adopted a more relaxed wardrobe, ditching the preppy attire my parents favored for clothes that actually felt comfortable. It was a minor act of defiance, but in the Matthews household, even the slightest deviation from their expectations was treated as a grave offense. Hanging up the phone, I tried to brace myself mentally for the impending ordeal. My plan was simple: attend the party, engage in polite conversation for a couple of hours, hand Jason a bland birthday card with some cash, and then depart as soon as it seemed polite. I figured I could tolerate one uncomfortable afternoon if it bought me several more months of tranquility away from them. What I couldn't have foreseen was that this very birthday party would be the last time I'd ever walkinated, that the casual cruelty, a hallmark of my relationship with Jason for years, would finally escalate beyond repair. That my parents' stubborn refusal to acknowledge my pain would spiral from emotional neglect into criminal negligence. I packed an overnight bag, intent on staying at a hotel instead of my childhood bedroom. Even that minor boundary felt significant, a tangible reminder that I was no longer under their sway. I selected an outfit that would satisfy my father's scrutiny yet still feel like me: dark jeans, a blue blouse, and comfortable flats, suitable for a casual gathering but not so dressy. I felt like I was playing a part. As I drove the 2 hours to my parents' home, I rehearsed the coping strategies my therapist had taught me for challenging family dynamics. Deep breathing, visualization, reminding myself that I was an adult now, empowered to leave if the situation became unbearable. But all the therapy in the world couldn't have prepared me for what awaited me at that party. No amount of calming breaths could avert the catastrophe about to unfurl, or mend the physical and emotional wounds that would inevitably follow. I pulled up to my parents' house at exactly 2 p.m., deliberately timing my arrival with the party's official start. This was a calculated move to minimize any direct, one-on-one interactions with my family. In a crowd, it would be simpler to blend in and avoid becoming their sole focus. The driveway was already packed with vehicles, mostly expensive SUVs and sports cars belonging to Jason's friends. I recognized a few, including the red Corvette owned by his best friend, Tyler, who had been just as involved in my childhood torment. My mother met me at the door with an air kiss and a quick appraisal that indicated my outfit had passed inspection, if only just. "Audrey, you made it. Everyone's out back. Your brother just opened his presents." Of course, they'd begun the gift opening without waiting for all the guests to arrive. It was a subtle signal that my presence wasn't crucial, merely endured. The living room was strewn with expensive wrapped packages, the remnants of what looked like an opulent gift unwrapping session. I noticed a brand new set of golf clubs, designer apparel, and what appeared to be keys to some sort of vehicle. "We got him that jet ski he's been wanting," my mother proudly announced, gesturing to a photo of the watercraft perched atop one of the larger boxes. "Your father's having it delivered next week." I nodded, feeling the familiar twinge of unfairness. For my 30th birthday, 6 months prior, I'd received a department store gift card. The imbalance was nothing new, but it still stung. I set my own gift, a plain card with $200 inside, on the table alongside the others. Then followed my mother through the house into the backyard. The backyard scene was exactly as I'd anticipated. Around 30 people, mostly men in their early 30s, were drinking beer and relaxing on the newly built pool deck. My father was playing the master griller, flipping burgers and steaks with the practiced skill of someone who'd perfected the art of suburban machismo over a lifetime. Jason held court near the pool, encircled by his usual crew. He had a beer in one hand, gesturing wildly with the other, likely regaling his friends with some inflated story of his own significance. He'd put on some weight since I'd last seen him, his once athletic physique now showing the signs of too many late nights and too little exercise. When he caught sight of me, he detached from his group and approached with the forced cheerfulness of someone acknowledging a mere acquaintance. Well, little sis, you decided to grace us with your presence after all." His words sounded amicable enough, but the glint in his eyes was anything but welcoming. He pulled me into a hug that was too constricting, too aggressive a physical echo of the power imbalance that had defined our connection for decades. "Happy birthday, Jason," I mumbled, extracting myself from his grip as swiftly as possible. "The place looks amazing." "Dad splurged on that new deck," he commented, indicating the wooden structure around the in-ground pool. Custom-built Brazilian hardwood. Cost him nearly $20,000 again. The unspoken contrast hung heavy in the air. Our parents would spare no expense for Jason's comfort and standing, while my own needs and requests had always been viewed as irritating burdens. I excused myself for a drink, choosing water over alcohol. Experience had taught me I needed to stay sharp in these situations. Alcohol would only lower my guard and leave me exposed to their manipulations. For the next hour, I successfully sidestepped direct contact with my family by engaging in pleasant chatter with a few other attendees. A handful of spouses and girlfriends were also there, appearing equally uneasy with the progressively rowdier vibe, and we formed a quiet pact of solidarity among the outsiders. But as the afternoon progressed and the drinks flowed freely, I could feel the atmosphere shifting. Jason and his buddies grew louder, their antics more grating. They began reminiscing about their high school days, exchanging tales that inevitably involved embarrassing someone they considered inferior, eventually as predicted. Jason's focus landed on me. Hey, remember that time we convinced Audrey the neighbor's dog had rabies? He shouted, loud enough for everyone to hear. She was so terrified she wouldn't go outside for a week. His friends roared with laughter, and my cheeks flushed with that familiar cocktail of shame and fury. I was 8 years old when Jason and his friends concocted that story, telling me the friendly Labrador next door had a deadly illness and would attack me. The fear was genuine, as were the ensuing nightmares. Or the time we swapped her shampoo with hair removal cream, Tyler chimed in, slapping his knee as if this cruel act were the pinnacle of humor. That particular prank occurred when I was 14. I'd been forced to wear hats to school for weeks while my hair regrew in bald spots. My parents had simply told me to stop being so dramatic. I took a deep breath and began collecting my belongings. I'd reached my breaking point. No family obligation was worth enduring this kind of public humiliation. But as I turned to depart, Jason cut me off, leaving so soon. The party's just getting started. His words were slurred, his gaze unfocused. He was drunk, which always made him more erratic. More hazardous. I have a long drive back, I stated, firmly, attempting to bypass him, but Jason blocked my exit. Come on, sis, loosen up. Have a drink with us for old time's sake. I recognized this charade, the feigned cordiality that would invariably lead to some form of public degradation. I'd fallen for it too often before. No thanks, Jason, I really have to go. His face hardened, the veneer of friendliness dissolving to expose the underlying malice. Still the same tightly wound Audrey, huh? Some things never change. I walked away, moving towards the sliding glass door that led back inside the house. I just needed to grab my purse from the living room, quickly bid farewell to my parents, and then I could escape this poisonous atmosphere. But fate, or perhaps Jason's malevolence, had other intentions. To reach the house, I had to cross a segment of the new pool deck. The instant my foot touched the wooden boards, I knew something was wrong. The surface felt oddly slick beneath my flats. I glanced down and saw a faint sheen on the wood, nearly invisible unless you were looking for it. In that split second, I understood what was about to happen, but it was already too late to stop it. My foot shot forward, violently, pitching me off balance. I tried to brace myself, arms flailing, but the slickness was too absolute, too intentional. My other foot flew out from under me, and I felt my body plummeting backward. Time seemed to stretch. I could see Jason and his friends watching, their faces a mix of eager anticipation and cruel amusement. I saw my father turning from the grill, my mother pausing mid-conversation with another guest. And then came the impact, not with the wooden deck as I'd expected, but with the concrete edge of the pool. My lower back and head struck simultaneously. A dual blow that sent agonizing pain up my spine and detonated like fireworks behind my eyes. I heard a scream, and only later did I realize it was my own. The world spun, colors blurring as my vision flickered in and out. When it finally steadied, I was flat on my back, gazing up at the bright blue sky. The throbbing in my head was agonizing. But what truly terrified me was the complete absence of feeling below my waist. Help, I gasped, my voice barely a whisper, even to myself. The fall had knocked the air from my lungs, and I fought to breathe properly. Please help me. I can't feel my legs. The first face to fill my vision was Jason's. He was towering over me, and to my horror, he was grinning. Nice pratfall, sis, very dramatic. He then turned to his friends. She always was a theater kid. I tried to move, to sit up, but my body simply wouldn't obey. My arms responded, but when I tried to shift my legs, there was nothing, no reaction, no sensation. Just a chilling void where the lower half of my body should have been. I'm serious, I said, my voice stronger now, laced with rising panic. Something's wrong. I can't move my legs. I think I hit my back on the concrete. Jason rolled his eyes, still convinced this was some theatrical performance on my part. Oh, come on, get up. You're embarrassing yourself. I can't get up. I was openly weeping now, tears of pain and terror streaming down my face. Please call an ambulance. I think I'm really hurt. By then, a small group had formed around me. I saw curiosity and unease on their faces, but no one moved to assist. They were mirroring Jason's reaction, assuming this was just another family spectacle for their amusement. My father pushed through the onlookers, his face fixed in a mask of annoyance. What's going on here, Audrey? Why are you on the ground, Dad? I sobbed, a wave of desperate relief washing over me. Surely, my father would take this seriously. I slipped and fell. I hit my back on the pool edge. I can't feel my legs. I need to go to the hospital. I anticipated concern, urgency, immediate action. Instead, I received a dismissive scoff. For God's sake, Audrey, the deck is perfectly safe. I just had it installed by professionals. He gestured impatiently. Walk it off. Stop being a baby. You're making a scene at your brother's party. His words struck me like a physical blow. Even now, even when I was literally unable to move, my pain was being brushed aside. My experience invalidated. Douglas, maybe we should help her up, my mother suggested, appearing at his side, but her concern wasn't for my well-being. People are watching. I can't get up, I repeated, my voice escalating with desperation. I need an ambulance, please. Mom, Dad, I'm begging you, something is seriously wrong. My mother knelt beside me, her voice dropping to an angry whisper. Audrey Matthews. That's enough. You've always been envious of your brother's attention. But this is taking things way too far. You're ruining his birthday party with this performance. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The pain in my back intensified, radiating outwards in waves that made it difficult to focus. My head throbbed where it had hit the concrete, and I began to feel nauseous. I think I'm going to be sick, I moaned, turning my head aside. She's probably drunk. I heard Jason tell someone, classic Audrey, can't handle her alcohol. I hadn't had a single drink all day. But facts had never mattered in my family's narrative about me. The sun beating down on my face worsened the nausea. I was sweating profusely, and a strange tingling sensation had begun in my fingertips. I knew these were bad signs, possibly indicators of shock or internal bleeding. Please, I whispered, no longer having the energy to shout. I need help. My father had already walked away, returning to the grill as if nothing was happening. My mother was fabricating excuses to the guests, telling them I was always prone to these episodes and they should continue enjoying the party. Jason had completely lost interest, rejoining his group of friends who were now loudly discussing plans to take the new jet ski out next weekend. I was alone, immobile, in agony, surrounded by people who actively chose to ignore my suffering. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain ever could. Then, from the periphery of my fading awareness, I heard a new voice, firm and authoritative, distinctly female. Excuse me, I'm a nurse. Please let me through. The crowd parted, and a woman I didn't recognize knelt beside me. She had kind eyes and capable hands that immediately went to my wrist, checking my pulse. Hi there. I'm Rachel. I work in there at Massachusetts General. Can you tell me your name, Audrey? I managed to stammer through chattering teeth. I was shivering now, despite the summer warmth. Okay, Audrey, I need you to stay perfectly still. Can you tell me what happened? I recounted the fall, the impact with the pool edge, and the instant loss of sensation in my legs. Rachel's expression remained neutral, but I could see genuine concern in her eyes. She leaned closer and spoke softly. I'm going to check a few things, but I absolutely don't want you to move, understood? She gently pressed her fingers against various points on my legs, asking if I could feel the pressure. I couldn't. She asked me to wiggle my toes. Nothing happened. I'm calling an ambulance, she announced, pulling out her phone. She doesn't need an ambulance, my mother protested, suddenly reappearing. She just needs to get up and stop making a fuss. Rachel fixed my mother with an unwavering gaze. Ma'am, your daughter is showing signs consistent with a spinal cord injury. Moving her could cause permanent damage. She needs emergency medical attention immediately. For the very first time, a flicker of genuine alarm crossed my mother's face. Spinal cord injury? That's impossible, she just slipped. Falls are one of the most common causes of spinal injuries, Rachel replied, already dialing 911. And from what I can see, she hit the concrete edge quite hard. As Rachel spoke with the emergency dispatcher, describing my condition and location, I saw my father approaching. His expression had shifted from annoyance to clear apprehension. What's all this about an ambulance? He demanded. Rachel, still on the phone, held up a hand to quiet him. After relaying the necessary information to the dispatcher, she turned to address my father. Sir, your daughter has potentially sustained a serious spinal injury. The paramedics will arrive in about 10 minutes. Until then, it is absolutely critical that she is not moved. My father's face paled for the first time. I think he was beginning to grasp that this wasn't an act, not an attempt to steal attention or ruin the party. This was real, and it was serious. How did this happen? He asked, looking around as if searching for someone to blame other than himself. Through the haze of pain and fear, I managed to speak. The deck was slippery, like it had oil or something on it. My father's eyes narrowed. That's ridiculous. I just had it sealed yesterday. It shouldn't be slippery at all, but Rachel, ever observant, was already examining the wooden boards. Near where I had fallen, she touched the surface, then rubbed her fingers together. This isn't water, she stated, her voice hardening. This feels like some kind of lubricant. All eyes turned to Jason, who had drifted back over to see what the commotion was. His alcohol-flushed face suddenly drained of color. It was just a joke, he mumbled, avoiding everyone's gaze. Just a little prank. I put some of Dad's deck oil on a few boards. I thought she'd slip a little and maybe fall in the pool. I didn't think." He trailed off, the full gravity of his actions finally seeming to register. The silence that followed was deafening. In that moment, as I lay motionless on the ground, I saw the stark truth of my family reflected in their faces, the casual cruelty that had defined our relationships, the deliberate blindness to the harm they inflicted, the automatic protection of Jason at all costs. But this time, there would be consequences they couldn't simply ignore away in the distance. I heard the approaching wail of sirens. They grew louder, cutting through the stunned silence that had fallen over the backyard. Rachel remained by my side, diligently monitoring my condition and keeping everyone else at a respectful distance. "Try to stay calm," she murmured. "Help is almost here. Just concentrate on your breathing." I tried, but panic kept threatening to consume me. The numbness in my lower body was terrifying. A gaping void where sensation should be. Each breath sent fresh waves of agony through my back and head, and the nausea intensified. The party guests had begun to scatter, drifting away from the scene, muttering amongst themselves. Some were already departing, clearly not wanting to be entangled in the unfolding drama. Others watched from afar, their expressions a mix of morbid curiosity and discomfort. My mother hovered nearby, her earlier dismissiveness replaced by a nervous agitation. She repeatedly smoothed her clothes, adjusted her hair small, telling gestures that betrayed her concern about appearances. "Do you really think this is necessary?" she asked Rachel. "Perhaps we could just drive her to urgent care ourselves." Rachel's response was resolute. "Absolutely not. She requires proper immobilization and transport. Any incorrect movement could worsen a spinal injury." My father had moved to the front of the house to guide the paramedics while Jason stood frozen several feet away, the gravity of his actions finally seeming to register. The paramedics arrived with impressive efficiency, two women and a man in uniform wheeling a stretcher through the gate to the backyard. Rachel immediately briefed them on my state and the circumstances of my fall. The lead paramedic, a woman named Sarah, identified by her name tag, knelt beside me. "Hello, Audrey, I'm Sarah. We're going to take good care of you. Can you tell me where the pain is worst?" "My lower back," I managed to articulate, "and my head, but I can't feel anything below my waist." Sarah nodded, her expression professional yet kind. "We're going to apply a cervical collar to stabilize your neck, and then we'll carefully log roll you onto a backbod. It's crucial that you don't try to help us move you, okay? Just stay as still as possible." As they worked, Sarah posed questions about the fall, how it occurred, and whether I had lost consciousness. Rachel provided details on my vital signs and her initial assessment. Then Sarah asked a question that changed everything. "Was the surface where you fell naturally slippery, or was there something on it that caused you to slip?" Before I could answer, Rachel interjected. "There appears to be some kind of oil or lubricant on the deck boards. I believe it was placed there deliberately." Sarah paused her work, looking up sharply. "Deliberately? Can you elaborate?" "Her brother admitted to putting deck oil on the boards as a prank," Rachel said, her voice steady but with an undertone of anger. "He intended for her to slip." Sarah and the other paramedics exchanged glances. Then Sarah turned to Jason, who stood with his hands shoved in his pockets, staring at the ground. "Sir, is that accurate? Did you intentionally create a slipping hazard that caused this injury?" Jason shifted uncomfortably. "It was just supposed to be a joke. I didn't think she'd get hurt like this." Sarah's expression hardened. She turned to her colleague. "Mike, can you inspect the deck surface and document what you find, please?" Mike nodded and moved to examine the area where I had fallen, taking photos with a small camera and collecting a sample of the substance on the deck. Meanwhile, the paramedics continued their methodical work to immobilize me. They secured a rigid collar around my neck, then carefully positioned themselves to roll me as a single unit onto the backbod. On my count, Sarah instructed, 1, 2, 3. They moved me with practiced precision. But despite their carefulness, the movement sent fresh agony through my body. I cried out, unable to stifle the sound. "I know it hurts," Sarah said sympathetically. "We'll give you something for the pain as soon as we have you secured." Once I was strapped to the backbod, they transferred me to the stretcher and began attaching monitoring equipment. Sarah placed an oxygen mask over my face and inserted N4 into my arm. "Your blood pressure is quite low," she noted, frowning at the monitor. "And your heart rate is elevated. We need to get you to the hospital right away." My mother finally seemed to grasp the seriousness of the situation. "Is she going to be all right?" she asked, her voice small. Sarah offered no false reassurance. "She has signs consistent with a significant spinal injury. The sooner we get her to a trauma center, the better her chances for recovery." As they prepared to move me to the ambulance, Mike returned from inspecting the deck. He spoke quietly to Sarah, showing her something on his camera screen. Her expression grew even more grim, based on what I'm seeing here and the circumstances described. I'm going to request police assistance, she announced. Police, my father sputtered, returning from the front yard. Surely that's not necessary. This was just an unfortunate accident. Sarah fixed him with a direct gaze. Sir, deliberately creating a hazardous condition that results in serious injury is not just an accident. Furthermore, I understand there was a delay in seeking medical attention for your daughter despite her reporting loss of sensation, which is a medical emergency. My father's face flushed with anger. Now, wait just a minute. You can't come into my home and make accusations like that, Dad. I said weakly from behind the oxygen mask. Please, just let them help me for once. My father fell silent. Sarah made a call on her radio, requesting police presence at the scene. Then she turned back to me. We're going to move you to the ambulance now. The ride might be uncomfortable, but we'll do everything we can to keep you stable. As they wheeled me through the house and out to the waiting ambulance, I caught a final glimpse of my family, my father arguing with Mike, gesturing angrily, my mother standing with her arms wrapped around herself, looking lost, and Jason still rooted to the same spot, watching as the consequences of his lifelong cruelty finally caught up with him. The last thing I saw before the ambulance doors closed was a police cruiser pulling into the driveway, lights flashing but sirens silent. In that moment, despite the agony and dread, I felt a peculiar sense of validation. For the very first time in my life, someone was truly taking my suffering seriously. The ambulance sped away, carrying me towards an uncertain future, but also away from the toxic environment that had inflicted so much pain. As the administered medication began to take hold, dulling the worst of the physical torment, I closed my eyes and succumbed to unconsciousness. I awoke to the steady beeping of hospital monitors and the sterile scent that seems to permeate every medical facility. For a moment, I was disoriented, unsure of my whereabouts or how I'd arrived. Then the memories surged back, the fall, the numbness, the paramedics, and finally, the police at my parents' house. A nurse noticed I was awake and approached my bedside. Welcome back, Audrey. I'm Carlos. You're at Massachusetts General Hospital. Do you remember what happened? I fell, I said, my voice raspy from the breathing tube that had evidently been removed. At my brother's birthday party, I couldn't feel my legs. Carlos nodded, jotting a note on my chart. That's right. You've been in and out of consciousness for about 12 hours now. The doctor will be in shortly to discuss your condition. Can I get you some water? I nodded gratefully, and he helped me take small sips through a straw. Even this simple motion sent pain flaring in my back. What's wrong with me? I asked, fear making my voice tremble. Can I still not move my legs? Carlos's expression was compassionate but professional. The doctor will explain everything. She should be here any minute. Try to stay calm. As if on cue, a woman in a white coat entered the room. She was in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun. Good morning, Audrey. I'm Dr. Martinez, the neurosurgeon overseeing your care. How are you feeling? Scared, I admitted, and in pain. What happened to me? Why can't I feel my legs? Dr. Martinez pulled up a chair and sat beside my bed. When you fell, you sustained what we call an incomplete spinal cord injury at the T1 to L1 junction, which is in your lower back. The impact fractured to vertebrae and caused significant compression of your spinal cord. She showed me images from my MRI on a tablet, pointing out the damaged areas. We performed emergency surgery to remove bone fragments and relieve pressure on your spinal cord. We also stabilized your spine with rods and screws. Will I walk again? I asked the question that had terrified me since the moment I lost sensation in my legs. Dr. Martinez offered no false hope, yet she didn't extinguish it entirely. Spinal cord injuries are complex and outcomes can vary widely. The fact that yours is an incomplete injury is actually positive news. It means the spinal cord wasn't completely severed. She continued, explaining that over the coming weeks and months, we would gain a clearer picture of how much function I might regain. Some patients with similar injuries recover significant mobility, while others experience more limited improvement. A lot will depend on your individual healing process and how diligently you work with physical therapy. So I might be paralyzed forever. The words felt surreal coming out of my mouth. I wouldn't use the term forever at this stage, Dr. Martinez replied carefully, but yes, you are currently experiencing paraplegia, which is paralysis affecting the lower limbs. We will work with you to maximize whatever recovery is possible, but you should be prepared for the possibility of long-term mobility challenges. The news hit me like a physical blow. I had entered my brother's birthday party as a healthy 28-year-old woman, and I was leaving it with a life-altering disability. All because of a prank and my family's refusal to take my pain. Seriously, there's something else we need to discuss. Dr. Martinez added, her tone shifting slightly. The circumstances of your injury have prompted an investigation. There are two police officers waiting to speak with you when you feel up to it. I closed my eyes briefly, taking in this information. My brother put oil on the deck, I explained. He admitted it, he wanted me to slip as a joke. Dr. Martinez nodded. That's consistent with the information we received from the paramedics. And there seems to be some concern about the delay in seeking medical attention for you after the injury occurred. My parents didn't believe I was really hurt, I stated. The familiar sting of their dismissal washing over me again. They told me to walk it off. They accused me of being dramatic and trying to ruin Jason's party. A flicker of something, perhaps anger, crossed Dr. Martinez's otherwise professional demeanor. In cases of suspected spinal cord injury, immediate immobilization and medical attention are crucial. Delays can significantly worsen the outcome. Are you saying that if they had called an ambulance right away, I might not be paralyzed? The implications of this were almost too much to bear. It's impossible to say with certainty. She replied carefully, but yes, generally, the sooner a spinal cord injury is treated, the better the prognosis. Every minute counts. Tears began to stream down my cheeks. The injury itself was devastating enough, but realizing it might have been less severe if my family had simply believed me was an additional layer of betrayal I wasn't prepared for. Dr. Martinez gave me a moment to compose myself, then asked, do you feel ready to speak with the police now? Or would you prefer to rest first? I'll talk to them, I decided. I want them to know what happened. She nodded and left to summon the officers. Carlos stayed, gently adjusting my position to make me more comfortable, and offering tissues for my tears. The police officers who entered were both women, which somehow made me feel a bit safer. They introduced themselves as Detective Sullivan and Officer Chen, explaining they were investigating the events surrounding my injury. We understand this is difficult, Detective Sullivan began, but we need to ask you some questions about what happened yesterday. I recounted the events as clearly as I could recall. Arriving at the party, Jason's increasingly aggressive behavior, my attempt to leave, the fall on the slippery deck, and most critically, my family's response to my injury. So, to be clear, Detective Sullivan clarified, after you fell and reported that you couldn't feel or move your legs, no one called for medical assistance, not until Rachel, the nurse who was at the party, intervened. I confirmed. That was at least 15 or 20 minutes after my fall. My father told me to walk it off, and my mother accused me of trying to ruin Jason's birthday. Officer Chen, who had been taking notes, looked up. And your brother admitted to putting oil on the deck. Yes, he said it was supposed to be a prank. He thought I'd slip and fall into the pool. He didn't think I'd hit the concrete edge. The officers exchanged glances. We should inform you, Detective Sullivan continued, that we've already taken statements from several witnesses at the scene, including the nurse, Rachel Cooper, and the paramedics who transported you. We've also collected evidence from the deck, which confirmed the presence of deck oil in the area where you fell. She paused before continuing. Your brother, Jason Matthews, was taken into custody last night on charges of reckless endangerment resulting in serious bodily harm. Your parents, Douglas and Eleanor Matthews, are currently being investigated for negligence and failure to provide necessary medical assistance. The news stunned me. As much as my family had hurt me, I had never imagined them facing criminal charges. They could go to jail, I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. That will be up to the district attorney and ultimately the courts, Detective Sullivan replied. But yes, these are serious charges, especially given the severity of your injuries. They asked a few more questions, thanked me for my cooperation, and then left, promising to keep me updated on the investigation. After they were gone, I lay in the hospital bed, trying to process everything. The physical reality of my injury was overwhelming enough, but the legal and emotional implications of what had happened were equally staggering. No one from my family had called or visited. I wondered if they were legally barred from contacting me, or if they were simply perpetuating their lifelong habit of evading accountability for the damage they inflicted. As evening approached, a hospital social worker named Marcus came to see me. He explained that he would help coordinate my care plan, including rehabilitation options and resources for adapting to life with a spinal cord injury. You're looking at a substantial recovery period, he gently informed me. Once you're stable enough to leave acute care, you'll likely need to spend several weeks in an inpatient rehabilitation facility, followed by ongoing outpatient therapy. I live alone, I said, the practical realities suddenly dawning on me. My apartment has stairs. I teach elementary school, which means being on my feet all day. Marcus nodded understandingly. These are all hurdles we'll help you navigate. There are resources available for home modifications, vocational rehabilitation, and disability benefits. It's a lot to absorb right now, I know, indeed it was, in the span of just 24 hours. Every aspect of my life had been turned upside down, my body, my home, my career. My family relationships all transformed in ways I was only just beginning to grasp. That night, alone in my hospital room, I wept for everything I had lost, and for all that now lay uncertain before me, but beneath the layers of grief and fear, a tiny spark of determination began to ignite. I had survived my family's lifelong emotional abuse. Somehow, I would survive this too. And for the very first time, they would face actual repercussions for their behavior. The weeks following my injury blurred into a cycle of medical procedures, pain management, and my very first tentative steps towards rehabilitation. I remained hospitalized for 14 days, during which the full extent of my injury gradually became clearer. Dr. Martinez explained that while the surgery had successfully stabilized my spine and eased pressure on my spinal cord, there was significant damage that would require considerable time to heal if it healed completely at all. You have what we call an ASIA-C/L classification, she told me during one of her daily rounds. This means you've retained some motor function below the injury level, but it's not strong enough to be truly functional. You also have some sensory preservation, which is a positive sign. I had begun to regain some feeling in my thighs and occasionally experienced tingling in my lower legs, which the medical team considered encouraging. However, I still had no voluntary movement below my knees and minimal strength in my hip and thigh muscles. The physical demands of recovery were challenging enough, but the legal proceedings added another layer of complexity to my situation. 10 days after my injury, I received a visit from a woman named Laura Jensen, who introduced herself as an assistant district attorney. The police investigation into your case has been completed, she informed me, based on the evidence collected and witness statements. We've filed formal charges against your brother and parents. Jason was facing a felony charge of reckless endangerment resulting in serious bodily injury, which carried a potential sentence of up to 10 years in prison. My parents were charged with criminal negligence and failure to provide necessary medical assistance, which could result in up to 5 years of incarceration if they were convicted. Of course, these are the maximum penalties, Laura clarified, explaining that actual sentences would depend on many factors, including prior criminal history, which none of them had, and whether they accepted responsibility by pleading guilty. She also informed me that I had the right to file a civil lawsuit against them for damages, regardless of the outcome of the criminal case. Medical expenses for spinal cord injuries can run into the millions over a lifetime, she stated. Not to mention lost wages, pain and suffering, home modifications, specialized equipment, and ongoing care needs. It was an overwhelming prospect. Part of me simply wanted nothing more to do with my family to cut all ties and focus solely on my recovery. But the practical reality was that I was facing enormous financial hurdles. As a direct result of their actions, Laura connected me with a personal injury attorney named Michael Greenberg, who specialized in spinal cord injury cases. He visited me in the hospital the following day, outlining the process of filing a civil suit and what I could reasonably anticipate. Your case is strong, he assured me after reviewing the police reports and medical records. The liability is clear, especially with your brother's admission that he deliberately created the hazardous condition. Your parents' homeowner's insurance will likely cover some damages, but for the full compensation you deserve, we would need to pursue their personal assets as well. The thought made me uneasy. Despite everything, they were still my parents. But as Michael gently pointed out, my new reality would include extensive medical bills, potential lifelong care needs, and a significantly altered earning capacity. This isn't about revenge, he stressed. It's about ensuring you have the resources you need to live as full and independent a life as possible. I agreed to let him file the lawsuit, a decision that felt both necessary and profoundly heartbreaking. Meanwhile, my physical recovery pressed on. After 2 weeks in acute care, I was transferred to a specialized spinal cord injury rehabilitation center. The facility was modern and well-equipped, staffed by a team of physical therapists, occupational therapists, psychologists, and rehabilitation nurses, all dedicated to helping patients like me adapt to life after a spinal cord injury. My primary physical therapist was a man named David, who combined boundless optimism with practical realism. Our goal is to maximize whatever return of function you experience, he explained during our first session. But equally important is learning to be as independent as possible with the function you have right now. Days at the rehabilitation center settled into a demanding rhythm. Mornings began with 2 hours of physical therapy, focusing on strengthening the muscles that still worked and learning transfer techniques to move from bed to wheelchair. And back again, afternoons involved occupational therapy, where I learned adaptive methods for daily living activities, from dressing myself to cooking. From a seated position, there were also group sessions, where I met other individuals with spinal cord injuries at various stages of recovery. Some had been injured years ago and returned periodically for tune-up therapy. Others were newly injured like me, still grappling with the profound shift in their lives. One of these patients was a woman named Tara who had sustained a similar injury in a car accident 2 years prior. She used a combination of leg braces and forearm crutches to walk short distances, though she relied on a wheelchair for everyday mobility. It gets easier, she told me one evening during the patient dinner hour. Not the physical stuff necessarily, though that does improve with time. I mean the emotional adjustment. Right now, everything in your life feels defined by your injury. Eventually, it just becomes one aspect of who you are, not your entire identity. Her words offered a glimmer of hope during my darkest moments, when the future seemed impossibly bleak. There were days when I made significant progress managing to stand between parallel bars, with the support of leg braces, or experiencing new flickers of sensation in my feet. There were also setbacks, infections that delayed therapy, and moments of utter despair when the enormity of what I'd lost overwhelmed me. Throughout this entire period, I received no contact from my family. My attorney informed me that their legal counsel had instructed them not to communicate with me directly. Due to the pending criminal and civil cases, part of me felt relieved. Another part felt the absence as yet another abandonment. Friends and colleagues from the elementary school where I taught stepped in to fill the void. They organized a rotating schedule of visitors to break the monotony of hospital life, brought home-cooked meals to supplement the institutional food, and set up a fundraising campaign to help with expenses not covered by insurance. 3 months after my injury, the criminal cases against my family progressed towards resolution. Jason accepted a plea deal, admitting to felony reckless endangerment in exchange for a 5-year sentence, with 2 years to be served in prison and 3 on probation. My parents also accepted plea agreements, receiving 2 years of probation and 400 hours of community service each, along with mandatory counseling. The civil case took longer to resolve. Michael, my attorney, deposed each family member, gathering their sworn testimony about the events leading to my injury. The process was exhausting but vital, compelling them to acknowledge under oath the truth of what they had done. 6 months after filing the lawsuit, we reached a settlement. My parents' homeowners insurance paid out its maximum liability of $1 million. Additionally, my parents agreed to sell their house and liquidate a significant portion of their retirement savings to establish an additional $2 million trust fund for my ongoing care needs. It was a substantial sum, enough to cover my immediate medical expenses, modifications to make my apartment accessible, and provide a financial buffer as I navigated my professional future. But no amount of money could truly restore what I had lost, both physically and emotionally. By the 8-month mark after my injury, I had achieved what my medical team considered remarkable progress. I'd regained enough function in my leg muscles that, with specialized braces and a walker, I could take short, labored steps. It wasn't walking in the effortless, unconscious way I'd once known, but it was more than many with similar injuries ever attained. I was discharged from inpatient rehabilitation. Continuing with outpatient therapy 3 times a week, I moved back to my apartment, which had been modified with ramps, wider doorways, and an accessible bathroom. A part-time caregiver assisted with tasks I couldn't yet manage independently. I also began the process of reinventing my professional life. While returning to classroom teaching wasn't feasible, the school district offered me a position as a curriculum specialist, a role I could largely perform from home with occasional school visits. Throughout this phase of physical recovery and practical adaptation, I was also undergoing a different kind of healing, working with a therapist named Claire, who specialized in trauma and family dynamics. What happened to you wasn't merely a physical injury, Claire noted during one of our sessions. It was the culmination of a lifetime of emotional abuse and neglect. The paralysis in your legs is evident, but there are other unseen wounds that also require mending. Under her guidance, I began to process not just the trauma of the injury itself, but the deeper patterns of family dysfunction that had enabled it. The relentless invalidation of my experiences, the golden child and scapegoat dynamic between Jason and me, the way my parents had consistently prioritized external appearances over my actual well-being. Your family failed you in the most fundamental way, Claire stated they had one job to protect and care for you. Instead, they caused you harm and then refused to acknowledge it. Accepting this truth was painful, yet ultimately liberating. It allowed me to see that my injury, devastating though it was, had also unchained me from the toxic family system that had caused me so much anguish throughout my life. Do you think you'll ever reconcile with them? Claire inquired during another session. I weighed the question carefully. I don't know. Part of me believes there's no way back from this. Another part wonders if these legal repercussions might finally compel them to confront the reality of their actions. Either way, she concluded, your healing doesn't depend on their acknowledgement or changes. It's something you do for yourself. And slowly, painstakingly, that's precisely what I began to do. Heal not just my body, but my sense of self, my understanding of what family truly should be, and what kind of relationships I deserved in my life. As I neared the 1-year anniversary of my injury, an unexpected letter arrived. It was from Jason, writing from prison. The envelope lay untouched on my kitchen table for 3 days before I mustered the courage to open it. Inside was a lengthy, handwritten apology, the first truly genuine one I had ever received. From my brother, he wrote about the therapy he was undergoing in prison, how he was finally confronting the person he'd been and the damage he'd inflicted. He offered no excuses for his actions and asked for nothing in return, not even forgiveness. I understand if you never want to hear from me again, he concluded. I wouldn't blame you, but I wanted you to know that I am truly sorry for the pain I have caused you. Not just on that day, but throughout our lives. You deserved so much better. The letter left me with a mix of complicated emotions. It seemed sincere, but I wasn't ready to let Jason back into my life, if I ever would be. Still, there was a certain sense of closure in having my experiences finally acknowledged by someone who had been there. My parents never reached out directly, though I heard through mutual acquaintances that they had relocated to Florida, starting fresh in a smaller house with whatever assets they'd managed to retain after the settlement. As for me, I was building a new life different from what I'd planned, certainly more challenging in many respects, but also rich with fresh meaning and connections. The friends who had stood by me during my hospitalization became my chosen family. The disability advocacy community I joined gave me a sense of purpose and belonging I'd never experienced within my biological family. And somewhere along the way, I unearthed a resilience within myself I hadn't known existed, a capacity not just to endure trauma, but to discover meaning and even growth in its aftermath. 2 years have now passed since that fateful day at my brother's birthday party. 2 years since a cruel prank and a family's callous indifference irrevocably altered the course of my life. 2 years of surgeries, rehabilitation, adaptation, and profound emotional work. My life today bears little resemblance to what it once was. I now live in a different apartment, a ground floor unit. In a fully accessible building, I drive a car equipped with hand controls. I work remotely most days, though I visit schools several times a month to train teachers on the curriculum I've helped develop. Physically, I've made what my doctors consider remarkable progress. With leg braces and forearm crutches, I can walk short distances, though I still rely on a wheelchair for most of my daily mobility. I've regained sensation in about 60% of my lower body, though it remains altered, sometimes manifesting as pins and needles or hypersensitivity rather than normal feeling. There are good days and bad days, days when I move with relative ease and almost forget my body's limitations, and days when pain, spasms, or complications like urinary tract infections forcefully remind me of all that has changed. But the most significant healing hasn't been physical. It's been the internal journey from victim to survivor, from someone defined by what was done to her to someone who actively shapes her own story. 6 months ago, I became involved with a local advocacy group for spinal cord injury survivors, serving as a peer mentor for newly injured patients. Twice a week, I visit the same rehabilitation center where I once spent months relearning basic life skills. I sit with people who are where I was 2 years ago, consumed by grief and fear, uncertain if life can ever be good again. It doesn't get easier, I tell them, echoing Tara's earlier words, but you get stronger, and you find new ways to define what matters. Through this work, I met Thomas, a physical therapist specializing in neurological injuries. Our professional relationship gradually blossomed into friendship and, more recently, into a tentative romance. He sees me for who I am, not defined by my disability, but not ignoring it either. With him, I'm learning what healthy love feels like, built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine care. As for my family, that chapter remains intricate. Jason was released from prison from months ago, having completed his 2-year sentence. He wrote to me again, asking if we might meet someday when I feel prepared. I haven't yet decided if such a meeting will ever be part of my healing process. My parents remain in Florida, living lives separate from mine occasionally. I receive secondhand updates about them through distant relatives. They've apparently spun a sanitized version of events for their new community, portraying themselves as devoted parents supporting their daughter through a tragic accident. The truth, as always with my family, has been reshaped to protect their image. But their narrative no longer holds power over me. I've learned that my truth doesn't require their acknowledgement. To be valid, my pain doesn't need their recognition. To be real, this has perhaps been the most profound lesson of my journey, that validation must ultimately come from within. For someone raised to doubt her own experiences, to question her own pain, this realization has been revolutionary. I've also learned the true meaning of family, that it's not necessarily defined by blood or legal ties, but by who shows up when you're at your most vulnerable, by who stays when staying becomes difficult, by who sees your pain and responds with compassion instead of dismissal. My chosen family has expanded over these 2 years. It includes Sarah, the paramedic who first recognized the seriousness of my injury and ensured I received proper care; Rachel, the nurse who intervened when no one else would; David, my physical therapist who pushed me to achieve more than I thought possible; Claire, who guided me through the emotional landscape of trauma and recovery; and now Thomas, who loves me not despite my scars, but with full awareness of how they've shaped me. Together, these connections have taught me what healthy attachment looks like, what it feels like to be believed, to be supported, to be valued simply for who I am, rather than for maintaining convenient appearances. Last month, I completed my master's degree in educational psychology, specializing in trauma-informed teaching practices. Next fall, I'll begin a new position as a consultant for the school district, training educators to recognize and support children experiencing various forms of trauma, including family dysfunction. It feels like a way of honoring my own journey while forging meaning from the pain I've endured. Perhaps that is the ultimate form of healing, not erasing the wound, but transforming it into something that serves a purpose greater than oneself. My paralysis will always be part of my story, as will the family dynamics that contributed to it. But neither defines the entirety of who I am or what my life can mean. Sometimes, when I'm with Thomas or surrounded by friends, laughing and fully present in the moment, I realize with a jolt that I am happy not despite what happened, but in a way that integrates it into a larger narrative of resilience and growth. Other times, usually late at night, when pain keeps me awake, I still grapple with anger and grief for what was taken from me, the physical abilities I lost, the family relationships that, even if toxic, represented my primary attachments for 28 years, the sense of safety in the world that may never fully return. But even in those dark moments, I'm no longer alone with my pain. I've learned to reach out, to allow myself to be vulnerable with those who've earned my trust, to accept help without shame, to acknowledge my limitations without being defined by them. If there's wisdom to be gained from trauma, perhaps it's this: that our wounds shape us, but they need not determine us. That even the deepest betrayals can become catalysts for profound transformation. That sometimes it takes being broken to discover just how much strength we possess. I don't know what the future holds. My doctors say I may continue to see minor improvements in function for up to 5 years post-injury, though the most significant gains typically occur in the first 2. I may walk more easily someday, or I may not. Either way, I will continue to construct a life that accommodates my reality, while pushing the boundaries of what seems possible. What I do know is that I am no longer the woman who entered that birthday party 2 years ago, desperate for approval from people incapable of truly seeing me. I am someone new, forged in the crucible of trauma and recovery, stronger in the broken places. As Hemingway once wrote, more authentic, more compassionate, more aware of both my vulnerability and my power. And that, perhaps, is the most unexpected gift to emerge from this ordeal: the discovery of a self worth fighting for, worth believing in, worth loving. If you're watching this and find yourself in a situation where your pain is dismissed, where your reality is denied by those who should protect you, please know that you deserve better. Your experiences are valid, your suffering matters, and there are people in this world who will truly see you, if you can find the courage to reach beyond those who refuse to. Have you ever had your pain dismissed by someone who should have believed you? How did you find the strength to trust yourself when others wouldn't? Please share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this resonated with you, please like and subscribe to support this channel and share with anyone who might need this message. Thank you for witnessing my journey, and remember, healing is not linear, but it is always possible.